Hello and welcome to BasementGamer.com's very first video cast. I'll be hosting this one. My name is Jay, and I'm one of the administrators of the website BasementGamer.com. Right now we're seeing an assortment of video game consoles that have come out over the past 34 years. This isn't an all-inclusive list by any means, but it does cover most of the major systems. What you're hearing right now is the main title theme to Super Mario Galaxy 2, and I'm going to hold that up as an example of the audio quality of video games today. What we're going to do is take a look at video games starting way back in 1977 and move through the current generation of gaming consoles, the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Wii. I'm going to focus mainly on the music and sound effects, of course, but we'll be seeing clips from some of gaming's most memorable outings. Since we're going to be talking about the Atari 2600 home console and arcade games, I thought the best place to start would be the meeting of the two. Pong. Produced in 1972 by Atari, Pong is one of the earliest video game systems to have sound effects. Let's take a look at it. Many people believe that we have Pong to thank for our video game industry today. It was a huge success in the arcades. It spawned the demand for home consoles specifically to play Pong, and then they branched out with the ability to include other games based on cartridges, which is what we'll see when we take a look at the 2600. As time went on, arcade games got more and more complex. As the games evolved in both hardware and gameplay, so did the sound effects that the games produced to enrich the gaming experience. So we'll move on to Space Invaders, one of the earliest shooting games. First up, we've got the arcade version released in 1978, followed by the Atari version released in 1980. For this one, we have comparable sound effects from the arcade machine and on the Atari 2600. As an aside, I enjoy playing this game much more on the Atari 2600 than the arcade machine. Besides the fact that it doesn't cost 25 cents, the sound effects are a little bit more subdued, which make it far easier to listen to for long periods of time. Thanks to the specs of the Atari and a special sound chip, Pitfall 2 was able to sound even better. Take a listen. Speaking about capabilities, the system had a 1.19 MHz processor and only 128 bytes of RAM. But that said, it still produced a lot of fun games that still hold up pretty well today. What video game discussion could be complete without including Pac-Man? Released in North America in October of 1980, it has become one of the most popular arcade games of all time. The sound effects in Pac-Man are noticeably better than those of Space Invaders. There's a music track, there's background sound, there's a sound for you eating the ghost, there's a sound for you being destroyed. But much higher quality than Space Invaders. Like Space Invaders, this received a port to the Atari 2600, which we're going to take a look at now. Although it looks passably enough like Pac-Man, doesn't sound anything like it. This port was rather poorly received, in part because of the hype built up around it. People were expecting a home version of Pac-Man, and what they got was probably the best that the 2600 could do at the time, which was a maze, the ghosts chasing Pac-Man, and collecting the pellets as he went around the screen. It was a home version of Pac-Man. It just wasn't the arcade machine in your home, which is what people were kind of expecting. In 1981, Midway released Miss Pac-Man, an unauthorized sequel to the original game. The gameplay is mostly similar to the original Pac-Man, with the inclusion of different levels and sort of cutscenes that explain what happens in the life of these two Pac creatures. Over time, it would seem that Namco gave this game their blessing and has included it in collections of other arcade titles. Miss Pac-Man happens to be my favorite of the Pac-Man arcade games, in part probably because it has slightly better sound than the original, or at least more of it, and more mazes that change after every so many levels. The last Atari game we're going to take a look at, and therefore the last game we'll see in part 1 of this videocast, is Miss Pac-Man for the 2600. It's a much better port than Pac-Man was, and it has some improved sound effects. I'm not going to tell you that it sounds like the arcade machine, but it does sound closer. Let's take a look and a listen now. You may have noticed that part 1 of this videocast has been a lot of me talking about the games and the systems. This is because the sound that these systems are able to produce isn't as substantial as that of later generation consoles. Therefore, when we look at the Nintendo, you'll hear more from the system and less from me. Until next time, this is Jay from Basement Gamer. Game on.